Uh, Hello, everyone, and welcome to the factory floor. We are excited to be talking through our conversion factory process. We've already talked through phase one. We've talked through phase two. And so we're going to review those, and then we're going to hit some of the nitty gritty stuff in phase three. It's going to be awesome. And we will go from there. The first and most important thing we need to talk about, though, is that Corey Haynes has a drink. It looks like it's from Chick-fil-A. What are you drinking?
Chick-fil-A is the official sponsor of today's episode. What do you guys think that the drink is?
I'm going to vote a Sunjoy.
No, I'm going with it's just tea, sweet tea.
Or
Do you
lemonade.
drink soda? I don't think you drink soda.
I don't even know what Sunjoy is. Also, I've never drink tea. Tea is disgusting. It's a lemonade.
Okay.
A Sunjoy is there an Arnold Palmer. They can't call it an Arnold Palmer. So they have a Sunjoy.
Right. Yeah, Sunjoy is very different though. Yeah, official sponsor. So thanks, Chick-fil-A.
Yeah. Corey, why don't you walk us through phase one, just a recap of what we can expect. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, Nick's having a little bit of technical difficulty here, but we'll keep rolling.
Yeah,
Hello.
no problem. So phase one is all about the foundation. That's where we'll go through an audit and the key foundational elements like the branding, positioning, the homepage. That's really just kind of setting the stage for the rest of your marketing. That's the stuff that people don't like doing up front because it feels like a waste of time because there's not a lot of deliverables attached to it necessarily, but they're super, super essential. Phase two is our base phase. So phase two is now about kind of expanding the funnel. There he is. He's back. And I'm talking through the phases.
Yeah, we're walking through phase one and phase two.
So phase two is the base phase. It's all about expanding our funnel. So now we're building out the key marketing assets and making sure that you don't have a leaky bucket in your marketing funnel. And then now what we're going to talk about today is phase three, which is expansion. And this is really the phase of pouring gas on the fire. And now that we don't have a leaky bucket, we have a firm funnel where things are set up for success, we can actually get a lot of traffic. We can actually now really grow and go kind of pedal to the metal. So and keep improving things and tweaking things. But really this is all about, I think, more the scale phase of a startup where they're probably more like Series A, post Series A, or if you're bootstrapped, you're over $1 million in ARR by this point, and you're really just looking for new channels and to make those channels work even better than before.
Yeah. Okay, so fine tuning the engine and then putting more gas in, essentially.
Yeah. It's the fuel.
We have a bunch of stuff on the list of what's in phase three. The name of what we do is our name is Conversion Factory. So the good news is that the first thing is around conversion rate optimization. I feel like there's a lot of times we get on calls with people and they're like, some of the things here in phase three are the first things they want to talk about. They want to talk about well, we're running ads and they're doing kind of good and sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. Or, we really want to focus on our SEO. And then we kind of get further into the call and we're like, I hate to break it to you, but you got to do these other things. We talked about the foundation and that kind of stuff. Why is it that these things are so attractive to the mid stage? We have enough, we think we have enough. So let's go to the end and just buy all the gas. Why is this stuff so much more attractive? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, it's always tempting to think that you can kind of fix your marketing funnel just by pouring more water into the bucket or doubling the amount of water that goes into the bucket. But it kind of just ends up getting wasted in a sense. For example, we talk about this with ads a lot is actually the best way to make your ads more profitable or even profitable in the first place is to work on your landing page optimization, not your ad copy or your ad creative optimization necessarily. Because those are the things that are most in your control. versus, the Facebook targeting algorithm, or what happens to be kind of working as far as like ad copy and creative goes in that moment, might not necessarily scale super well. But what scales super well is a high converting landing page, right? Same thing with SEO. People are like, hey, we're getting traffic now. Like, hey, we have pages that rank well in Google for the target keywords, but they're just not really turning into customers quite yet.
Sure.
But instead of going through the hard work of, hey, let's like interweave more product stuff into our blog posts. Let's make sure that we have a funnel so that people go from our blog posts to our sales landing pages, to our conversion pages, and actually sign up for the product. Why don't we just write more blog posts, see if that helps, see if that works? You know what I mean? So it's always easier just to kind of like brute force your way through doing more of something versus fixing that thing to make it work how it's supposed to in the first place.
The funny thing about conversion rate optimization is that I feel like everybody always attributes it to ads and to and A/B testing, but conversion rate optimization could be any number of things. It's like it's the equivalent of like get healthy, like what I need to do, and there's a multitude of things. I think that just like somebody who is trying to lose weight or get in better shape, oftentimes one of the first things to do is just they'll have you do an audit of, well, are you sleeping? Like, are you setting the foundation so that you have a well-oiled machine that is going to burn calories and keep you healthy? And that I would consider that being healthy. So conversion optimization, you could lump the positioning within that. You could lump the branding. Like, I mean, it's sometimes non-direct indicators that we would be approaching. So it's all conversion optimization. I think that this is just hyper-specific, targeted conversion rate optimization of what's already been built. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
now
No,
we're
it's very true.
getting to like the really the nitty-gritty of like, well, what if we changed this sentence and see how that impacts things?
Yeah, it is true that like kind of everything is conversion rate optimization if you think about it hard enough. Maybe a better way to think about this is like macro conversion rate optimization versus micro conversion rate optimization, where the macro is more like, okay, we're going to swap out all the copy on the landing page and we're going to redo it based off of a positioning exercise. Or it might be like, we're going to completely redo our onboarding funnel, or we're going to go from a demo request to a free trial, or free trial to freemium. Like, those are big sweeping macro changes that you're hoping result in more conversions at the end of the day that cascade down to revenue. But then there's these micro conversion optimization that's more A/B testing, split testing. Does this testimonial work better? Does this one? Does this headline work better? Or is this one? Should we put the little floating thing in the bottom right corner or at the top? Does a banner work better, or does so on and so forth, right? And that's actually a really good point. I'm glad we're talking about this, because a lot of people want to do conversion optimization from a micro perspective too early, right? If you just have a couple hundred visitors per month or 1,000 visitors per month, there's no point in doing a split test, testing this version of the page versus that version of the page. You're just not going to learn a lot, and it's going to take too long to get enough data. So you want to make bigger sweeping changes, like let's test this positioning against that positioning. Let's have like a really ugly version of this versus a really pretty version of this. Let's see what resonates, right? But then funnily enough, I feel like at later stages, there's still a lot of companies that have never done any micro conversion optimization, and they've never even tested a headline or an H1 on their page. And they're at, $3 million in ARR and still don't really have an idea of like what messaging works best for their audience.
Yeah, I was sorry. You're going to say something, Zach?
No, go for it.
I was going to ask because like CRO is like you never like get to the end of it. You know what I'm saying? Like it's kind of like what you're saying. Like it's you could everything is CRO, or like you could always improve the rate, which is kind of one of the problems. CRO is like an unending, you can always improve to type thing in my mind, which is kind of like part of its flaw, like a fatal flaw, is that you can always have a greater or better conversion rate. Um, is there something that you use particularly as like a marker of like, it's less important that we focus on this opposed to the other things uh, in this phase? Like if we, say we get to phase 3 and it's like, your conversion rate's actually pretty good. It's not really like as worth our time to focus on this as it would be to like start hitting ads really hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's important to have a decent understanding of like what the benchmarks are. That way you're not chasing something that's completely impossible to attain. I think it's also important to recognize that your conversion rates are actually probably going to get worse over time, the better or the more success that you find. This is something I learned at Barometrics, where everyone would always come to me and be like, it's so weird. A year ago, our conversion rate was 2%, and now it's 1%. And we've grown a bunch. And so I don't understand what's happening. So I started digging into the numbers, and it's like, oh, yeah, it's because you have like 3 times more traffic. You're still getting twice as many new customers, but technically your conversion rate went down. Right? Does that make sense? Where like the
Mm-hmm.
more traffic you get, and maybe the more brand awareness, the more times you go viral on Twitter, whatever it is that, that's getting more people at the top of the door, inherently that also means that there's going to be more unqualified people checking you out. And so your conversion rate's going to go down. And that's okay. Even though that sucks, the opposite is that, the same amount of people who are qualified find you, but you get less and less unqualified people over time. But that just almost never happens, right? It's like you can't expect to only get the most qualified people who sign up. It's okay to make some noise and have people check you out who aren't necessarily going to buy from you right this second. Um, but yeah, I think the biggest thing is, are you in a healthy range? And if we had to kind of stack rank and prioritize, these are the metrics that matter the most. And maybe we have, you know, B and C already checked in good ranges, but A isn't, then let's not waste time trying to improve B and C even more, right? We want to get everything to a relatively healthy level. I think maybe we could also think about it from the perspective of like the funnel stages as well, where if you have a couple of funnel stages, like, all right, traffic to a sign up, and then sign up to paid, and then paid to upgraded, and we already have good rates on free to sign up and on paid to upgrade, but we don't have a good rate on sign up to paid, then that's the thing we should focus on the most,
Mm.
or take it for any one of those that might be missing. And there's more granular steps in between, but it's the theory of constraints, right? Like find the weakest link, find the weakest point, the thing that's constraining it the most, the bottleneck, and then just attack that the most.
That's smart. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I do want to talk about the next one. I was just thinking through some of the other things in our in phase 3. Um, in phase 3 is go to market, launches, campaigns, things like that. On the list of like things like that is like product hunt, for example, which from the outside, I think product hunt feels a lot more like one of the first things you do. Like you get just like the minimum viable thing, and then you're like, I'm trying to get this out there so that people start to see it. Like this is one of the first things I do, I think, from maybe from like an outsider's perspective. And like a launch to me is like maybe one of the first things, that takes place when you're like, hey, I guess got a product. I launched a new product today. I just built it yesterday. Not like, hey, oh, I just did my branding. I did my positioning. I did all this other stuff. And now I'm like launching this new product. Why does it make more sense to put this stuff at the end or near the end of our process and not near the beginning?
Yeah, yeah. That's good. That's a really good question, actually. Something I talk about in my upcoming book, Founding Marketing, working
Little
title
plug.
TBD. Yeah, you got to whet the appetite, it's part of marketing.
Yeah.
But the thing is, because actually when we say like launches and like launch on platforms like Product Hunt, what I mean is like, what I don't mean is wait to launch until now. What I mean is do your like last launch at this point. So what does it mean to actually launch a product or like a SaaS product today? It means multiple launches over time. It means like actually you're kind of always launching. There's almost never a time you're not launching, but you're launching in different ways and at different times. Let's see if I can get this to focus. The thing about launches for SaaS products these days is that I think there's probably about 5 steps. You want to do like an internal launch where if you're like a stealth startup or if you're really, really early stage, maybe you're just launching to your coworkers, to your family, to your friends, to your close colleagues, your mentor, or some sort of like close knit community, right? And then stages like 2, 3, 4 of launching are kind of iterations of that where you're expanding who you're sending it out to. Maybe now you're giving a couple of teasers on Twitter. Maybe you're getting your listings up. Maybe you have a single page website now up. Maybe you have X, Y, and Z. We're kind of slowly peeling back the layers of the onion. And then the final one is more like your big splash. And this is really like once you have things dialed in and this is for real, and now you want to make a big ruckus. Now we're going to do like everything where it's a product hunt. Maybe it's a PR. Maybe it's getting featured in a tech magazine or article. Maybe it's going on a big podcast tour, right? There's a lot of different things that are involved with a launch. And then even then, you can still keep launching new features. You can still keep launching new partnerships. You can still keep launching new mini products or content material or anything like that, right? There's lots of things to launch, but definitely don't wait to launch. It's just, this is like, once you want to put a lot of time and budget into this, then yeah, let's make it count.
It sounds like it's pretty much anything that's new. Like that's launchable.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Webflow does this all the time where I feel like when Webflow ships new features, it's like a heyday on Webflow Twitter. Same thing with Figma. Like I remember when they were gearing up for just Interactions 2.0, which is a pretty decent feature. But they had a full-fledged campaign around it. They had like social posts. They had a dedicated landing. They had a dedicated site specifically to Interactions 2.0, and it was all to build up hype around this. And they did the same thing for for Webflow e-commerce as well. So I feel like the reason that these are later is because they are an expansive element. Like it's like the continual launch and addition of new things. Or maybe it's just a different way of thinking about your product. Like maybe you have a different story to tell that you end up building an entire campaign around. Like that's really going to be emotionally stirring, that you pair with a bunch of ads and you have a continual through line with all of the assets that you create in particular for that campaign. So I feel like this is the expansion phase is things that just never end. You're always going to be doing these and continually iterating on them, which is why they come at the end. Not to say you won't do stuff you won't reevaluate your positioning, you won't flex your brand in different ways, you want to add new feature pages. But the reason that these are at the top is because there's no shortage of use case for them. They will always be present.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like, launch new positioning, or sorry, just say like have new positioning, launch it. Have a new brand, launch it. Have a new interesting
Feature.
point of view. Yeah, have a new feature, launch it. It's true. Like, I actually think there's a huge missed opportunity. I would love to do more work like this at Conversion Factory, where SaaS companies ship a lot. And as product people, you get used to pushing things in production where like, okay, now this is done, and you check the box and then you just move on to the next thing. Because to you, it's not a big deal. It's normal. It's like, this is my job. This is what I do every day. Your customers, however, aren't aware of the things you're shipping unless that you tell them. And so there's so many things that people ship and they launch, quote unquote, in the sense that they like make it live in the code base, but then no one ever uses and no one ever appreciates, simply for the fact that no one told them to look at it and appreciate it. And so launching is just getting in the habit of like, just let people know that you did a thing.
Even stupid quality of life upgrades too.
Yeah.
Like I feel like people would be shocked if you know that you have an issue with your software, or like there's a part of your process that's not as streamlined as it could be, the minute that you make that change, it's like a sigh of relief from your entire user base. Like I keep bringing up Webflow, but I feel like it's because they are one of the tools that I follow closely. And then when they did launch things like this, it was really impactful. Like
Yeah.
it was something small and stupid. Like they made it so you didn't have to click. You could get to your dashboard again from inside the Webflow designer, as opposed to having to go through like an additional interstitial step. No, they made it so you could get to your site settings from the designer, as opposed to just having to go back to your dashboard, get back into your site settings. And my gosh, freaking
People
like
freaked out.
everybody and their mother, dude. It's like, wow, Webflow, thank you so much for this. It made my day. Like, I
It's
love
just
you.
so simple and crazy.
Yeah. And all they did was add another button
Yeah. Right.
to the
There's nothing
designer.
too small.
The whole idea of like a launch, to me, like I could see how it would be easy to be like, oh, like we're launching this new thing, and you just say it and that's it. And I feel like part of the reason why it's like on our list, excuse me, and within our like process is because these campaigns and launches, if done correctly with the right amount of time and work and like marketing gusto, are bigger than just telling your customers what's going on or telling potential customers what's going on. It's like they can really actually become campaigns that bring in new customers versus just like saying something. Like, to me, I'll see somebody on Twitter just being like, here's my new AI agent app, whatever. Just, they're launching something and I'm like, cool, thumbs up. But if there's like a big, like, orchestrated effort with a bunch of copy, illustrations, videos, product demos, that stuff is like, if that is integrated within a launch or a campaign, it's going to be so much more effective. And I feel like that's why it's something that we keep on this list, is like, this is something you need marketing expertise with. It's not just you saying, here's what's happening. It's like bigger than that.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
super interesting. I really like whenever we get to do things like this.
Yeah. I want to do
want to
more of
hit
it.
ads now. Oh, are you going to keep talking launches?
No, I was going to say we can't talk anymore about it for the sake of time, but I will just say one last thing about it, which is that another like low hanging fruit is even just doing the bare minimum of following up with people who made a feature request can be like do wonders for your business and like getting new customers. You'd be surprised just like how many people cancel because a feature is missing or don't sign up because a feature is missing. And then if you just say, hey, this exists now, they will pay you money.
That's awesome. So great. Sorry, I like almost cut you off, but the next thing on the list is ads. Ads are like a really common thing that we end up talking about with on calls with people, because it's one of the first things like that they're thinking marketing agency equals ad agency, which is funny. But ads falls pretty late, on our list on this on all of our phases. Why does it make sense to put them here, not to run them earlier, not to run them like, hey, I just put up my landing page. Like I don't have any features pages. I just have like a pricing section and, I have my hero and that stuff. And then like a couple testimonials and then like I launched and now I want to run ads. Why does it make sense to do it here after a lot more of the building blocks are in place?
Yeah, because there's a 99% chance that it will just be wasted money unless you wait to do it after you have your foundation, your base set up. This is just my experience of, talking and working with dozens of startups, but I've never encountered a startup who was like, yeah, we just, I don't know, turned on Facebook ads and then just started bringing in new customers profitably at a good scale with our dinky little landing page. It just doesn't happen. It might have happened like 10 years ago when the costs were so low that maybe you could. Today, unfortunately, the costs are so high that you almost can't afford to take that risk. It's like you're basically just going to be flushing money down the toilet if you take that approach. So assuming you have a strong foundation set up, a strong base, you don't have a leaky funnel, everything is all buttoned up, then we're more than happy to run ads for people and give that a shot. Still, there's a chance that they might not work strictly because of the economics of the ad platforms and just the state of media buying today, because it's pretty expensive. And the sales cycles can be so long that it's hard to do it profitably. Because here's what people don't like think about is that whether you're product led or you're sales led, if you're product led, you might get someone to sign up from an ad, but then they might be a free user for 6 months and then start paying you $10 a month, let's just say, for example. If you're sales led, that also doesn't really fix your problem necessarily, because someone might do a demo and then they might go through some sort of, legal procurement, trying to get, build a case for it internally, and then 6 months later sign a contract with you. And it still might be like a starter contract where you might go onto a pilot, for example. And so there's just such a huge amount of time on average, usually from the time that you spend the money on the ad to the time that you get money for that customer, that it takes a lot of money to float that time. On average, like 6 to 9 months. 6 to 9 months is kind of the average payback period of acquiring a customer as a SaaS product. So that's why it's like, you probably should just wait to do this, because the odds are already like 50-50 at this stage if it's going to work for you. If you do it earlier, the odds are going to be like 95-5,
I wonder if like the paradigm is shifting on these a little bit, where like ads used to be very direct response oriented, like extremely direct response oriented. And now I feel like the landscape is shifting to where they're becoming more storytelling elements with some of the brand facts and like actually marketing of the product woven into it. But I feel like it almost makes more sense now to try and play that storytelling angle, because it's going to be the one thing that is different in the ad landscape that might actually convert more, even if you think that it doesn't necessarily follow the tried and true practices of, what's the AIDA attention, you know what I'm talking about, that
Yeah.
AIDA, yeah.
Attention, interest, desire, action, I think it is.
Yeah. Well, see, I wonder if people would be better service trying to remember EEE, which is, it's either educational, entertaining, or emotional. Like that maybe your ads are supposed to be geared more towards that way, and that they become more of a brand play, less of a direct response play.
Yeah. No, it's true. I actually think that's why we follow more of a click testing process, where we're not just trying to make an ad profitable and say, okay, how can we get people to go to this landing page and then sign up and then become a paying customer right away. Step one is really, how do we even create an ad that will get clicked on in the first place? Like, what is a message and an audience that message resonates with? That is step one to making profitable ads. So you might as well not even think about how to make a profitable ad in any sort of direct response style of funnel before you can nail the copy, the messaging, the creative, and your target audience, which is really what the click testing approach is all about.
And maybe you might actually have to do something that's legit, like a YouTube video ad or like a real ad, not just a GIF of, not to say it couldn't be a GIF. I think there's very creative ways to use simple design elements and simple creative assets. More what I'm getting at is that you might have to think a little bit more creatively, and less along the lines of, like, I'm expecting this to get a response. You might not. I think that instead you might just get eyeballs on you and interest, which is what you need to obtain more customers and to build something that they will not only take interest in, but then share that interest with others.
Yeah.
It seems like
ads are hard. That's the thing.
Ads are hard.
But when they work,
the feedback is so like, you just never know what you're gonna get. I feel like it's such a mixed bag. Like you could have someone that comes in that's just says like, dude, our ads are killing it. Like it's awesome. We just need to like fix our CRO, like work on our landing page. Or they could be like, oh yeah, we dumped like 50K a month with this agency and then we did this one and like we just been like flushing money down the toilet for months, so we ads don't work for our product, like we're just done. um it's just so weird that it's never consistent.
I I do wonder that I feel like the phrase will never work for a product. I feel like that gets thrown around with a lot of different marketing efforts. And I don't think it's true for any of them. I think that any and all advertising and marketing efforts can work. It's just like at some point it becomes a numbers game, no different than sales, like where you have to be willing to put in the time and play long and make sure that you're actually like you're experimenting with them. Uh, and I don't know. I wanted to get that out there. I don't think that any of these efforts
Yeah.
are a no-go. You might just have to think outside of the box for them and understand that the whole point of marketing is getting your name and recognition out there as a viable solution to a problem. And
Yeah.
that's a multi-stage process.
If ads don't work, it's not that they don't work, it's they don't work for you right now at this price point, or considering all the
Or
other variables that we don't
or the way that
have
you're
a lot
doing
of
or the
control
way that
over.
you're doing them. Or the way that you're doing them.
Right, right. Exactly.
Mhm.
You might have to like really think outside the box, or you might have to experiment with things that you don't have the infrastructure for. There's a, right. There's so many parts to it where, just like I was talking about, like being product led versus sales led, it could be that you can't make ads work for you on a product led model, but maybe you could with a free trial, or maybe you could with a demo request, or maybe you could with a interactive demo. Do you have the infrastructure and the time and the appetite to test that? The answer is usually no. And I understand why. But again, it's not that ads don't work. It doesn't work for you right now, given the way that things are going.
Yeah. After ads, next thing on our list, I want to just keep rolling because we were spending extra time on everything. Sorry. Is another great buzzword, SEO, baby. SEO is like a huge word to just like plug in. But specifically on our list, it's SEO content. So it's like content focused around SEO. Um, uh, Thankfully, like I think like SEO in mind is like woven into a lot of the work we do, like from the beginning, all the way through like building feature pages and building out, when we're copywriting, like we're thinking a little bit about like, hey, how does this fit into keywords and making sure that we're doing all the right things. Um, what we have things like programmatic SEO on the list here and some other things. What can you explain a little bit how this piece, SEO content, is different than just like we need to get our SEO better? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what does it mean to have actually SEO content instead?
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, like you could say you have good SEO if someone Googles your brand name and your brand name comes up on the first page. Does that mean that that's going to lead to customers? Not necessarily, because people would have to know your brand and be looking for you in the first place, which maybe they're going to do that because of your other marketing efforts, but um, the odds are kind of low, right? Normally, they're going to come in through another avenue. So when we say SEO content, we mean creating content, usually blog content, specifically for the purpose of ranking in Google for keywords that we think qualified customers are probably Googling. And now we can sort of come up, we can serve, we can answer their questions, we can be a trusted source of information, and maybe even have a call to action within that content that gets them to try out our product. And now it's a profitable acquisition channel. There
Oh,
are sales pages and feature pages that can also rank for relevant things. Um, I wouldn't call that, it is content, but I wouldn't call that content in the terms of like um, purely educational resource, right? Those are more like sales resources. So SEO content is very educational, and it's geared towards Google, not hoping that you're going to get shared around on social media.
I was going to ask, because I feel like a really in-depth feature page can serve as a source of SEO.
Hmm?
And that's totally viable. Same thing with like broadening the scope of what does SEO mean in terms of a software business's website. It could be things like case studies. It could also be things like your product documentation, or
Absolutely.
like help docs that which are, because if someone's going to be searching, how do I change XYZ in this product, and if your documentation shows up showing them how to do that, that's really good, rather than maybe a competitor who is targeting you and saying, oh, this sucks, by the way, we don't have this problem on ours, so maybe you should just use our product instead.
Mm.
What else would you include that you, because blog is kind of a generic term. um, when I think blog, I think of things like, I wrote an article about, these keywords, and, here's step 1, 2, and 3 of how you can do it too. What would you say are some of the areas where you could use, like, we're coming at it with an SEO perspective, and it's content, but it's not things that, particularly like technical founders or, uh, other product people would consider as SEO content?
I'm sorry. Ask the question one more time.
Sorry. What what would you consider SEO content that other people typically would not consider SEO content?
Oh, I see. Um, well, you mentioned a couple. Product documentation is definitely a big one. Um, integrations pages definitely have a big SEO potential. Uh, competitor comparison pages or roundups of competitors can be really good as well. Even just sort of blog content about other tools and things kind of adjacent to what your product does, but might not be a tool. It might be more of like a workflow or a process or
Mm.
um, a DIY approach to something. Um, but I've just seen time and time again the best SEO content, in other words, like educational content specifically and primarily created for search engines, is pretty much always things oriented around answering a question, solving a problem, um, or showing how to do something that your product does without your product. Um, like it always works every single time. I don't know if that'll ever change, and I'm kind of glad because it's um, such a good channel. Like SEO makes me feel good because you can treat your content like a product in the sense that people are looking for something and you can help them with that thing by creating the content. And then also you can show them how they can do that thing usually better with your product. So it's a win-win in that sense, right? There's no like interruption, there's no manipulation, there's no sleazy sales tactics involved.
Mm. Hmm.
Um, it's all educational and and value add driven.
Yeah. Well, and then if you apply some CRO tactics to your blog and to this content, you actually have a way higher likelihood of getting people to the sales. I
Right.
mean, we had a client who had a 152-day sales cycle for large enterprise contracts. And after we did some CRO work on their blog, which was getting a lot of traffic, uh, things like quizzes, ample opportunities for them to take an action to book a demo, that decreased by 85% from, I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but I know that it decreased by 85% and went from 150 something days to, it was either like 23 days, it was 23 days or 32 days.
Hmm.
One of those.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not dyslexic. I just don't remember which one it was. So
Yeah.
I think that SEO content's extremely powerful in that it gives you gateways, especially if you give just the right amount of push for
Mhm.
somebody to then take action.
That, that was going
It's
to be a
23, by
question
the
that I
way.
had. Is, yeah, 23. There we go. 23 days. Is that interplay, like, I'm not a copywriter. How big is the gap between SEO copywriting and conversion copywriting? How big is that gap? Like, is it so big that it's like it kind of feels like clunky if you're like, and here's my product, or is it like, hey, I can kind of meld these and they both work really well?
Um, yeah, it's sort of like being a mechanic for a car and being a mechanic for an airplane. It's like
Totally
you're
different.
you're yeah, you're mostly doing the same types of things, but completely different things in different ways for a different purpose. Um, like conversion copywriting is very sales oriented. SEO content is completely educational oriented.
Mm.
Now, with the caveat that really, really good sales copywriting is also educational, like you're also teaching along the way. And when you're doing really good SEO content that's educational, you're also selling along the way. That's what actually makes it, profitable and in a marketing strategy and not just a nice, helpful resource that's a freebie. But yeah, they're very different. Like I don't know a lot of copywriters that do both. I know copywriters that are really good at writing SEO content. I know copywriters that are really good at writing landing pages, and they tend to be different types of people with different skill sets and different processes.
Different beasts. Yep.
Yeah.
Totally. Okay, let's keep rolling. The next thing on our list is internationalizing the website. Um, we probably don't have to go like too deep into this one, but I guess like in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, like there's a tested product. It's in, let's say it's in the U.S. It's doing well. It makes sense to like open that door to other countries, other payment methods and things. Um, there are some businesses that early on have like a wide variety of users in a wide variety of countries where to me it would feel like, well, you kind of need like some sort of internationalization earlier. Uh, do you think that's the case, or do you think it's best for them to focus in on their primary market and then like widen their array later on?
Yeah. So the benefit of most US startups is that most of the world in a business sense speaks English or at least understands English well enough. And they know that the US makes the best software. And so they're kind of Googling and looking for things. And they're always looking for what US companies, US people recommend from a software perspective as well. So that makes things easy. Um, if you're a startup and you're getting customers from Brazil, um, from I don't know, Switzerland, from Germany, from Singapore, cool. Like you don't have to do anything, right? But for one, if you're a non-US or non-North American company and you're trying to sell to the US, you need to broaden, right? And two, if you feel like you've tapped out the US market and you do want to internationalize, you can't just expect everyone to um, magically expand your sales funnel overnight, right? You have to be intentional about it. You actually have to then go and internationalize the site. And the reason why I think this is such a big deal, it doesn't really feel like a big deal, but it actually is a really big deal, is because there's a lot of ways to do this poorly that actually end up hurting you. Um, and it is an intentional thing you have to do. Um, and there's definitely a lot of optimizations that can be made. For example, you don't want to use subdomains, you want to use subfolders. For example, you can use and adopt other payment methods that allow you to collect local currencies versus just the US dollar or whatever your native national currency is for your startup. Um, and those two things alone are really hard technical challenges.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that? What logistically, how do you go about bringing that on? And then once someone is in your product, now what about your all the language options within your product? Now what about your help docs? Now what about your chat and customer support? Like it's a pretty strategic move for a company. And so internationalizing isn't just providing, a translation. it's really a larger, it's one project in a larger strategic initiative for a company.
Mhm.
Even within just the translation, you can get very specific with, I'm thinking of a difference where you have the same landing page for the US, for Argentina, and then you have it for Singapore. And you can get to the point now where you can change the images on those specific translations as well. So I'm thinking of things like, on our, the abstractions that we do of interfaces, you have to change the copy in those as
Mm-hmm.
well to be in
Mm-hmm.
Chinese or to be in Portuguese or in Spanish. And then they also have to take into account things like, well, people in Singapore don't really look like people from Texas or
Right.
New York. You want this to feel like it is for them, especially if you're going to go so far as to translate your entire website, you should have some kind of visual cues as well that this is for them, mainly in the form of, do the people that are using this look like me? Especially like if you're going for these hyper targeted segments of people where there's a very clear distinction between the US market, the South American market, and the Asian market.
Yeah. Yeah. From a copywriting perspective too, um, a lot of what makes good copywriting in English does not necessarily make for good copywriting in another language.
Mm-hmm.
A lot can get lost in translation. And
Mm.
so you have to be
You
careful,
can't just
right?
push it through Google Translate.
I mean, no, especially, I mean, it's kind of a catch-22 in a way. And I wish it wasn't like this, but you know, in English, a lot of good copywriting is kind of clever. It's using wordplay. It's making these short, quippy sentences. Um,
But that doesn't work in German, where all the
yeah,
words are, uh, combinations of each other.
exactly. Even things like alliterations, because alliterations are my favorite kind of tactic in copywriting. It just makes everything sound smooth and cohesive. It's harder to do alliterations in other languages, and or it might not even make sense to do it because there's not the same kind of word choice or flow with that syntax. So yeah, you have to be very, very intentional.
Yeah,
Yep. Should we hit the last one?
I think we should
Okay,
Do it.
let's do it. Web development. This is a very broad. Obviously, like the web development has been taking place like through many of these things because we're building the landing page, we're building feature pages, we're doing SEO content, we're, you know, doing a bunch of stuff. Um, so when this is at the end, and this is like we're focus less on the word web and more on the word development in my mind. Like, okay, let's make this thing like a super machine for of a website. What comes to your mind when we get to this point? Like that is the most important things that like we have all this other stuff and now we need to like plug in do these a bunch of third party plugins and we need to like build these cool little elements that sit on different pages. What are the things that sit within this category for you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, you guys are more the domain experts in this area, so I want to hear a lot of your thoughts, especially using client examples. But one of the big things that comes to my mind from a marketing perspective is one, you just don't want a CMS to get in the way of you shipping things as a marketer. I've been in multiple scenarios where I was using a platform like WordPress, for example, not to name names, but they're the
but
worst.
WordPress.
And and it was like, hey, we have this feature that's coming up. I'm going to build a landing page for it. Oh, the feature's done. Where's the landing page? Oh, it's still stuck in the dev queue and they're not going to get to it for another couple of months. Cool. So actually, we're not shipping that feature. You know what I mean? Or even things like blog posts. Like it shouldn't be hard to go and add a blog post. It shouldn't be hard to go and whip up a new X, Y, and Z, right? You just don't let your CMS get in the way of you doing marketing. And number two is really just about site speed and page performance, because that is another big determining factor for conversion rates. If you have a really slow, sluggish page, that's going to drag it down. And that's going to not only just poorly reflect your brand, but it's also going to discourage people from taking action. And it's going to be a negative signal to Google. So you're not going to rank as high. So it's important stuff.
Yeah, I think on the SEO or on the CMS content thing that you mentioned, um, I do think that's super important. I think like as someone who's building the site, I'm often thinking like how, my gut is like, how can I make this really awesome and easy to build? And I can just pump out a bunch of great, CMS based pages. But then like thinking back on it and being like, okay, no, I shouldn't do it. Like I should build it so it's great for me, but also great for some random marketing hire who's been hired to pump out 10 blog posts a week. Like I need to make sure that this has everything it needs for them to flip a switch and add a CTA somewhere in the middle of the page, or to flip the switch and switch the hero image on the blog post to a podcast recording, and they could just paste a link and it'll zap right to the top of the page. Like, so building it so that it's really easy for a marketer to use, which is why we use Webflow, is because the handoff process to someone else is really can be super smooth. And then I also think that like just adding fun little like, oh, we added this like calculator or a slider for the pricing, which might encourage someone to click a little bit faster, or to like slide it to the end and be like, oh, they have custom pricing, like what does that look like, and click this button. And there's just a lot of little things that you could do. And I think to the thing you mentioned about page performance is that a lot of websites these days are overly interactive, I guess is what I'm looking at.
Hyper interactive.
Hyperactive. I don't know. Where they just go crazy with all these visuals that slow the page down. I like them because I get there and I'm like, ooh, and I build websites and look at websites all day. But the average Joe who's like, hey, I'm looking for a solution here, I'm not looking for some amazing, beautiful, perfect thing, uh, wants the page to load fast and provide them with the information they're looking for. So it's kind of a catch-22 with that kind of thing. But
Mhm. Yeah, I think my favorite thing about all this stuff is the interconnectivity between different data segments within your CMS. Because I get fascinated with keeping people entrenched in your site and having them spin off to other pages, and just like trying to think through, if I'm on this page, if I'm on this blog page, what kind of feature page could I then link to and add here? And that's really easy to do if your CMS is well configured and you have all of those different data sets pointing to each other. Like, hey, here's a feature, and here's a case study where this feature was essential to them getting these results. So I think that what you'll notice is that the more you can utilize and interconnect that data, the better your site's going to be. And that's, I think, the whole point of a CMS is to show that, not only make it easy to create the content, but then link it together.
Yeah, walk the visitor through a journey on the site.
Yeah, I think a really cool example is the funnel envy playbook, where they have all these tactics, and that's a cool case study. I think of like how the CMS opens up new ways for people to interact with your website and showcase your expertise, showcase your products, showcase your services, where it's not as like boring, but also just it's the right tool for how's the saying go?
I don't know.
The right tool for the right purpose. You know what I mean? Like,
sounds good.
You shouldn't just have to make everything a blog post. You should be able to get more creative with how the information is displayed, and a good CMS and a good system how to use that CMS allows you to kind of wow people and make it like a true custom tailored fit for the information.
Yeah, obviously I like web development. I love getting to this point where it's like, let's tweak a bunch of stuff and like play with it. It's a very a fun time, and like getting to the end and being like, oh, let's start just going crazy on this thing. But anyway, okay, that is the end of phase 3. That's the end of what we're going through today. What a journey we've walked through. Great work, y'all.
I know.
And we'll see you on the
We
next one.
made
The
it.
next one will be a complete mystery. You will not know what the next topic is.
Well, it might be about SaaS marketing. Maybe.
Maybe.
No, we don't talk about that.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, any final words before I cut both of you off?
I would just say listen to phase 1 and phase 2 as well.
Totally.
Get the full picture of what you need to do, and don't try and jump from step 1 to step 10, because you'll fall, you'll chip your teeth, and then you'll be right back where you started, only you'll be hurt.
And we will laugh.
We won't laugh. That's rude.
Maybe.
Nick might laugh.
Yeah, I'm a nice guy. Come on. Okay, well, thanks for joining us, everyone, and we will see you next time.
Peace.